Hey, good evening and welcome to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Tom McLaughlin, there's the camera lady. And tonight we have a continuation of sorts where last time I shared with you a unusual project which turned out to be a container for a dog's ashes.
Shouldn't laugh, it's
Unfortunately, the commission fell through. This is where you want to say doggone it.
Oh, doggone. Doggone.
So anyway, I was kind of excited to build this thing, and when it didn't happen, I jumped ahead and I had a nice chunk of mahogany and I was cutting it out. And I thought I could show it all in one session. I was woefully mistaken because last week I went through the stage of working out the practice steps on a chunk of pine like this and got the lid fitted and then ran out of time. So tonight we want to pick it up. This is the sculptural ashes box. It could actually be any kind of box you like. You know, you can make these any shape. This shape, if you're curious how I did this, this is like a little inset about 3/16 of an inch. This was the starting cut. You know, we routed this and then the recess, the corresponding recess, so that that lip fits right in there beautifully. You get a nice snug fit. And we routed that. Oh, I haven't touched that one for a week. It's been humid here, so things are sticking a little. But this is how I did it. If you want to see it, check out the previous video. I'm sure we have a link to that.
Links in the description below, yep.
Awesome. So it's always on top of it. I've got these templates I made last time, and I described how I made them, and then I just tacked them to these pieces and routed around using a guide collar, a 5/8 guide collar with a 1/2 inch spiral bit, which happens to be an upcut bit. So nice situation. It allowed me to route around there and then around there, and what you end up with is a pretty darn close fit. Required a little sanding, little card scraping, just to get it dialed in and really press fit in there. Now, I know what some of you might be saying, I mentioned this last time, you could do this as one of those bandsaw boxes, but in order to do the bandsaw box method, you saw in and then you cut around, you saw off the base, take out the middle, glue it all back up, glue a little shim in that place you cut out, and then the top and all that. I wanted to try to make this out of a one-piece deal. So I actually have a chunk of material. We first cut off the lid and then did this recess. All right, so now what we've got to do is evacuate. We've got to evacuate the interior to make more room for the box. So this is kind of an interesting box because everything works from the inside out. So we create our fit. That template that we made to create these jigs is the core. And then we cut around, create the fit, and now we're going to clear out this interior. So before we cut it to shape, while we still got it in a block, we'll get this out. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, you could just get a router bit, right? Plunge and make a major mess, right? A lot of noise, a lot of wondering if it's working and vacuum. But the most civilized way, and the way I recommend, is to go to the drill press and use a Forstner bit. They're amazing. They take off big shavings and it leaves a flat bottom. So I've got it already set to plunge down and come just shy of the full depth that we want. So we can head over to the drill press and I'll go ahead and drill this out, and then we'll come back and we're gonna flush route the interior. I've got a 1 3/4 inch bit in there, I'm just going to go around and plunge here, and we'll get rid of a lot of this waste. All right, let's be boring. Okay. Isn't this way more civilized than the router?
Mesmerizing, really.
It's one of those strangely interesting videos, you think?
Captivating.
All right. Check it out. Pretty fast, huh?
Wow.
All right, let's head back to the bench. Isn't that way better? Coming out with these big, heavy, thick shavings. Now I've got most of the material out. Now I have to trim the exterior with the router. So I'm going to use a bit similar to this, but not this one. I'm going to use one a little bigger with a top bearing, okay? So we'll come in, and that top bearing is going to bear against that nice smooth surface that fits our lid. So it'll give us a nice flush cut. And so then we'll create a flush surface below that, so then we can plunge the bit further if we like, and we'll be going against the freshly flushed surface, and we can just keep going that way. But you can only extend the bit so far. So the one I have in the router, I'll show you in a second, is 1.25 inches here, so it gives us a good depth. I want to have a cavity about 2 inches deep in this block. So before we do run the router, we've got these points. We can get those off quickly. And I'm just going to chisel them. Just make it a little easier on the bit.
It's cool what the Forstner bit did to the bottom. Kind of made a texture circle.
Well, it leaves the points. That's what I was checking on the depth, because I want the router to take away those points, but I'm not sure I think it's set deep enough. So the router bit will clean the floor a little bit, as well as okay, just go right on around. I don't want to split this out underneath there, so trying to be careful not to do that. But this is a practice piece, really. The mahogany one is the true money piece. But you know, the shakers used to paint their shaker oval boxes, believe it or not. Most of them were painted. So it wouldn't be in poor taste to paint these pine boxes and use them, you know, make something out of it. So I didn't re-mention, but this is shaped like a contemporary letter D, or kidney, if you prefer, which seemed to be the comment coming from the gallery. So, but I'm thinking stylized D. But yeah, the dog was Dexter, but you know, you could just use it as the generic D for dog and cover a lot of bases that way. All right, so here we are. We're ready to plunge. Let me show you the setup. I got my Triton. I'm gonna advance this bit so you can see it. See, this has a great method of plunging. I just like the way it, but the collet is pretty short and it's weird. I don't know if they still do it that way, but I hope they improved it. I've got this out a little bit, but I have a full 3/4 inch grabbed in the collet, so I'm comfortable with that. I've got an 1.25 inch cutting surface here, and there's my top bearing. So when I first plunge, I'm gonna go so the bearing is bearing against that nicely smooth surface. Then I'll drop it down again, and I'll go around one more time, okay? So I'll do this all kind of fast, and then we'll be there. So let's get our gear on. Okay, that's half of it. I just wanted to show you what we've got. I could vacuum that out, but so look at that. We've got a nice smooth sidewall here. See that?
Nice.
It just flushed right along, and it flushed up with previous. So now we have this long flush. So now I can just plunge to the full 2-inch depth, and I'll be bearing a little lower here. We'll go right on around and hopefully clean up that floor a little bit. Okay, let's just make sure we got it all. Yeah, that looks good. I'm gonna stop
That's
there.
great.
So once you've got that, then you can look at that. I was going to try to round that bottom edge, but I liked how clean that inside corner looked. It's pretty crisp, right down through the layers. So you can clean the floor. You're going to see the little markings of the. Well, let's do it down here. You can see this end better, right? You like this end. We can put it in the vise now, and you can use a chisel as a scraper. If you hold it kind of at a slight angle, you don't need a burr on it, and you can clean up the floor just like this. It'll take out those, you'll see the little pathways of the router. You want to get rid of that. Just, there'll be light scratches, you know. And then you can get in here and sand a little. Then the side walls, you can come in. I'm going to use a card scraper. Now I want to be careful not to do too much to my upper edge because that's already fitted. But the way it was sticking slightly, it won't hurt if I hit it a little. I got a little chip out there. I don't know if that was from the chiseling a little too aggressively, but that's okay. I'll be more careful if it's a solid box, but not a big deal. So I'm liking how this is looking, aren't you?
I am.
So this is the one we used last time, and this is where we drew our line. All I did for that, just to reiterate how we did that, was I took a square, I set it to just about 5/8 and made a few tick lines there, and then set my finger to that line, and just using my finger against the wall, that nice smooth wall, I just went right on around, and I'm creating a parallel line to the interior 5/8 of an inch wide. Okay, this is that idea that I said how we are doing this. We're building this box from the inside out. This shape is determining. Now we're coming out and getting that out of shape. Let me just get this over here a little better. Okay, now ready to go to the bandsaw. All right, so I'm just going to trim the end so I don't block myself in. All right, so we remove, and now we can see we're starting to have a nice, sweet
wow.
little box,
That's
right?
cool.
Of whatever shape we want. Now, this feels pretty smooth, but what I'm going to do is just make sure the curves are nice, because now that we've got the bottom, everything feels pretty smooth. Oh, there's a little bump right there. I'm just going to take that off because I don't want to trace and recreate a bump if not necessary. Not much. That's fine. All right, so let's just pretend we did the whole thing. We actually don't have to do that much there. And now we've got the issue of our lid being oversized, right? It's still weird. So we're going to set that on there, press it down. Now I can get a pen. Let's see, a pen will give me a nice dark line. And I'm just going to trace right along what I just cut. So it'll give me a perfect match. This is completing the inside-out shaping of this box. Now notice that this black line that I'm tracing, technically it's completely outside the surface of the base. So when I'm bandsawing, the perfect bandsaw cut would be to just remove the line, and then I would be flush with this, right? So I'll try to just touch into the line a little bit as we go. Okay, now the moment of truth. We can fit our lid, and we can see we're pretty darn close
Wow.
to flush, right? But we're not quite there, but it does feel pretty flush. So just by using that rule, if you just take that line, you should be good. Now, I could do this a number of ways. Over at a sander or spoke shape it a little. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to clean it up a little bit before going to the sander. Like if you have a big discrepancy somewhere between the top and the bottom, you can just come with your spoke shave. Let me get that blade out just a touch more. We'll be a little more aggressive here. All right, so this is just getting it a little bit going. Look how it turns orange. It looks like almost looks like a shaker box. And across here, same thing. I'm just trying to touch it up a little bit. I'm going to show you on the belt sander in a second. This just helps. Get it right here. Okay. That feels pretty good. Okay, so the other thing, now that it's together, we want to smooth it. And if you have a wide belt sander like this, one of the keys to using one of these things is you never want to stop moving. If you stop moving, you create a flat or a bump. Now, what is nice is right on this rounded, it fits beautifully right around that. And I didn't even plan that, I don't think. I don't remember that. But it works. And then I'm just keep moving. I don't have to get it perfect. I can always clean it up a little more if I can't get a bump out with the spoke shave. Here we go. You see how it's really starting to come together. So that's pretty close. If I have any kind of bumps that might translate, I can still skim them with my spoke shave. You know, just tune it up a little bit.
It's noticing the new handle on the vise.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I trying this out. This is a Hovarder vise, if you weren't around for that and you're coveting my workbench. It is a course on our Epic Woodworking page. You can actually build this bench. We have a video course along with full-size drawings, but the hardware is Hovarder, and it's super cool because it slides. You just back it up and goes anywhere you want, and then you just push it up to it and turn, and now it's locked because it's got like a clutch down in here. Okay, so once you've got this all smoothed out, then you can do a final little card scraping just to clean it up a little further. wherever you need. You know, if there's a little ripple somewhere, you can usually pull it out in this area here. But it's actually pretty smooth. And then this side, it's almost perfect. Going with the grain, of course. This pine does not, it's not as friendly to card scraping as hardwoods, but it works. Okay, so once I've gone around and I've flushed it up a little better, then I would just come in with my palm sander. Let me put on my hearing and dust for those. A little noisy. Check it out. So there we have our gorgeous box. The lid is a little sticky, but I got to sand that a little bit more. It's gotten humidified. But you can see how beautifully, when you fit it back, it indexes so precisely that you get that gorgeous kind of seamless, smooth edge. Now, this is not how I envisioned the finished product, right? I wanted to go beyond this outer sculpting shape and actually shape the top. That's why I made the top thick. See, it's a little thicker. I wanted the stability of it, but this is going to be carved a bit and scooped out to create a D. So if a little more scripted D. I'm thinking I don't know, let's just, if we made a pencil line, something like this. Come over in here. This is good to have the extras here. So if I come in this way, I don't know, could even go veloutish here. But I was thinking this outer would be rounded this way, and in here we could cut it under, and this whole thing would have like a roundedness into to give it a little more texture on the top. But that's just my starting feeling about it. But then you would have a more stylized carved D. It looks it is like a shaker box this way, but kind of clunky. Let me show you the other ones that I got up to speed, and especially like this white pine I glued up the layers, so you can see a glue line there. I just used 2 pieces of 1/4 to get the full thickness. So look how nice that one fits. That one I did earlier today. So that's got a beautiful press fit, and it's super flush. I love how it aligns. This is the real joy though. This is the chunk of mahogany, and what I want you to notice is this was one full chunk. There's no glue line for the thickness. When I sawed it apart, you can see how the grain matches.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it looks pretty slick, how it swirls. And a lot of that you'll see if you go back and you'd missed the previous video. The way the template was made, I was able to lay it out on both pieces so that I maintained the orientation. So when these curves come together, I knew that the grain was going to be in the same position.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, so you can see this has a little more weight. Look how more classy it's gonna look, right? But the top just is begging for a little something. Maybe it'll be, there's so many things you could do with it, right? So I was thinking of carving, it'd be actually fun to carve something as practice, like almost some hard styrofoam or something, you know, to get the visual and decide what you want. But check it out, we've got 3 boxes now. So I'm afraid we might have a part 3 to this. I think I might.
3D.
I might sculpt. Yeah, it's 3D. Wow. Oh, that was major dad joke there.
Oh, gosh.
So yeah, there we are. That's 3D for you. Modern. All right, so are there any other questions? Any questions?
No, I think we're...
All right, everyone.
Wait.
Well, stay tuned. Hey, if you enjoyed this content, we'd love to have you get closer over at epicwoodworking.com and like, share, and subscribe and all that fun stuff. Helps the channel. But stay tuned. We're going to do one more on this. We're going to carve. We'll have some practice carving on the white pine.
Awesome.
And get some finish on the mahogany. So, hey, thanks again for hanging out with us a little in the shop. I hope you enjoyed this very modern version of a shaker box. And we look forward to seeing you next time. On behalf of the camera and myself,
Yes.
we'll see you next time right back here on Shop Night Live. All right, everyone, good night.
Thanks,
See ya.
everyone. Take care.